Welcome back to the Pistol Report. My name is John Francois. I'm the Senior Instructor for Archangel Technologies. And in our last video, we left off talking about terminal ballistics and the methods by which bullets stop human and animal attacks in the body. So let's do our 4 rules of gun safety. The firearm is always loaded. Don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot. Know your target and what's beyond it. And don't let the barrel of your firearm cover anything that you're not willing to destroy. Now that we have that, when we left off, we were discussing the shock waves that the projectile causes as it enters the body. And we talked about the temporary wound channel or wound cavity, which is those shock waves moving out, and then the permanent wound channel, that is the destruction of tissue, blood vessel, muscle, bone, tendon, all the things that the bodies are made up of. So the temporary cavity, what happens with that temporary wound channel is it collapses back down because of the elasticity and the fluids in the body. But it can do shock damage, as we talked about. One of the methods is instantaneous traumatic shock. It can also sometimes do remote injury by hitting organs and causing organs to be injured. And it also can cause a lot of damage from the point of view of the trauma in that area from those waves moving out. But the biggest factor is the permanent wound channel, where the blood vessels and the tissue are destroyed by the bullet. So now we're going to move on to more of terminal ballistics. And one thing before we get any further was go over the ways by which the bullets stop an attack in an animal or human. A hit directly to the central nervous system, which is the brain, spinal cord, brain stem, anything in that central nervous system. If it's hit directly with that projectile and the spinal cord or the brain is damaged, it can stop the attack immediately. The other way is rapid drop in blood pressure to the brain, and that can be caused by internal or external hemorrhaging, bleeding. And then the third way is that instantaneous traumatic shock. And I'd like to add one more. Once again, when I was a young officer, we were present at an actual shootout, and what happened was these 2 different parties, 2 people each, were shooting at each other. And when we pulled up with the lights and sirens, one group fled, the other group fled the other direction. And while one of them was running, one of the other gentlemen on the other side of the street turned around and fired. We saw a man, looked like he slipped and fell, looked like he tripped. And once we had the scene secured and we walked over there, he didn't trip. He was down and he was in shock and dying. And what happened was the bullet had hit him in the hip as he was running. And the bullet shattered the hip and part of the pelvic girdle. And he really didn't trip and fall. The structure of his body gave out. And that's another means that bullets can stop an attack by an animal or a human. Is if the bullet hits a solid or load-bearing bone that's carrying a lot of weight, then if that long bone, femur, gives out, then the structure that holds the person up or the animal up can be so disrupted that it stops them being able to move freely. So that's just one of those things that lets you know that when a bullet hits, it's going to have some devastating effects. So the other thing is, remember, the ball ammunition that does not have a hollow cavity doesn't do as much damage. It's a much thinner, straighter wound channel. It will still sever vessels, destroy muscle, and do all the things a hollow tip will do. It just doesn't expand and create more damage. Not only that, there have been cases where people have been shot and the bullet, because of its shape, has actually entered the body and kind of moved aside intestine or an organ as on its travel. So that's why the bullet is usually used for target practice. But any new hole theory, that theory we're going to talk about is any new hole that you put into somebody that they were not born with is going to give them severe problems at some point in time. So that's why when we teach self-defense, our point is always make sure you put rounds on target, because that's what's going to change the behavior of the attacker, whether an animal or human. And so, once again, the jacketed hollow point is preferred because it does more damage to internal organs, tissue, or anything it hits. And in the next video, we might start talking about what happens when a bullet hits the human skull and enters the brain cavity. But for now, see you later.